Hello, and welcome to Slate by Technolutions Simulive Experience at EDUCAUSE. My name is Ken Higgins, and I will be here to answer any questions you may have about the presentation you are currently viewing or how Slate functions. Please feel free to type your questions and comments into the chat box provided. Today, we are going to hear from experts representing various offices in the higher education environment. We invited them to share their thoughts and experiences on topics ranging from meeting prospective students' expectations, supporting current students to ensure they are getting the attention and information they need to succeed, and rethinking donor engagement. As a full lifecycle CRM, Slate is a highly customizable, purpose-built solution that can assist in many business functions across multiple campus departments. Starting things off and beginning with admissions and prospective students, we asked Johnny Johnson, who is the Vice President of Admissions at Transylvania University, how can you meet the students where they are in the absence of physical, in-person events? Here's what Johnny had to say.
There's a blend there because, of course, the students are also learning online. So you can't just be in their face all day long because they're actually taking class, in school. So, the challenge for us is one, trying to schedule a high school visit when they're not actually in a class or supposed to be learning. And so we're working with our guidance counselors on what those time frames look like. Is it the 8 o'clock in the morning open period? Is it lunchtime? Do they have an open period during the day? The Saturdays have been pretty good for us in terms of just an admission session on a Saturday morning because at least they're not in school now. And I'll see more parents on those Saturday mornings, at least for us. And then during the week, I will tell you, our coaches have been very active in recruitment. Even though our seasons have been limited or canceled in some ways, they're still recruiting for the next season, and they've still been connecting with families. So I would say it's limited. We're definitely not seeing the numbers that we would see on campus, but we're seeing them where they want to be engaged. And that's just different now. It's really just different. I could tell from March to May how virtually tired the kids were. And they just didn't actually want to engage a lot this summer, even though we were putting some content out there, at least not the prospective students. Our admitted students, our deposited students, they were engaged because they had a little different connection. They're trying to get enrolled. They're trying to pick classes and things like that. I'm curious to see what that response will be for the fall because, again, the rising seniors, even though they were virtual last semester for the last part of their junior year, this is a new experience for them. And so they're now trying to see, what colleges are offering what. Is there a preview day, like Brandy said, or is there a one-on-one session, or are you doing something with the theater department, or is the music department doing something? And so we're trying to meet the students where they are and paying attention to those emails that come back to us and say, I really want to know this. The other thing I'll say, it's been really encouraging that our professors have been willing to engage, even though they're teaching virtually. And I know that that's been a double bit of work for them, trying to keep their classes engaged, but then also recruit for their majors. And I know that's a lot of work, but they have actually been really spot on in terms of helping us. So again, it's meeting them where they at where they are, and not trying to over engage them because they will get virtually tired and the numbers will quickly dwindle when they just don't want to turn their computer on. This age group usually is in front of the computer and their phones all day long. And now they're like, yeah, I need a break. So we have to watch that part of it.
As we learned from Johnny, sending dynamic, highly personalized communication, strategically leveraging users outside of the admissions office, and thoughtfully engaging with your audience proves to be beneficial in prospect engagement and management. As we transition to the next phase of the student life cycle, we asked Sable Vasquez, who is the Director of Prospective Student Services at Oklahoma State University Institute of Technology, how do you leverage Slate to support student success on your campus? Here's what Sable had to say.
But we do have what we've set up as a concierge messaging system, and it's set up just like a regular Complo would be, but it's based off of a survey. Like almost everything that we do, we have a survey at the beginning. So we will survey our new students when they enroll for They answer the survey and answer questions based off of things that you don't traditionally ask, just to make sure that they're getting all of the resources and information sent to them. So we ask them questions, are you going to be on campus? Are you interested in off campus? Are you a commuter? Do you have health insurance coverage? Are you underinsured? Do you have dependents? All different kinds of questions. And then we use those survey results to build live queries within our messaging. Do you want to do that? Yeah, thank you. For an example, so we build live queries with each different message. So depending on how they respond to the survey will depend on which message they get. So it's not like sending blanket messages to every single student about every single resource that we have available to them. So for example, this one, I think it's asking them if they have a dependent, if they have health insurance, and this is one that we send them about prescriptions. So if you potentially have a hard time filling prescriptions because you don't have money for you or for your child, maybe you're underinsured, then this message goes out to that specific audience. And we time it out so they don't all go at the same time. We space them out throughout the semester depending on what messages they need on times when they might need that. And so it's set up just like a regular Conflow, but it's for our currently enrolled students, and it's things that they might not receive the information from a specific office or from an advisor or from a faculty member. So they can message or range, from, housing assistance. We do, prescriptions, food service programs, what else? Weatherization. Around here, a lot of people have to have fingerprinting services done to interview for a job. So we have mailings about that. We have mailings about emergency utility assistance for people to help, pay their electric bill if they get in a bind. So we have a lot of different of those resources that we send out to our students, but only if they've indicated they might potentially need that service. So it's not just bombarding every student with every message. Yeah, we can. It just depends on which the message is. Some of them we track more than others. So, for example, we really use the student timeline. We're in that all day, every day recruitment and in student success. So just as an example, this student, and I went back a couple years to find this just because I remembered this one off the top of my head. In your interactions, you guys have the data tracking reports for all the messages that you send out, or you can go by individual timelines. So there are things in there that we can utilize, especially in our messaging. I like to say, don't just set it and forget it and think, oh, well, everything's going automatically. Well, there are other ways that you can use that information. And so for this specific student, in just underneath a month time period, you can see that they were reopening some of those emails over and over again. And so we were looking at this student because they had been reported in our early alert system. And so this just gave us, that they weren't quite performing in class as well as they had been. And so we go back to their timeline and check this and use this information that they kept opening those same emails over and over and over again. And so we do the additional outreach and reach out to that student. Hey, you were reported an early alert, but we wanted to kind of talk and see if there's something else going on that we can help you with. And, come to find out that student had just recently become food insecure and homeless. We needed to find them emergency housing as quickly as possible. And obviously when someone's dealing with those types of situations, they're not going to do well in their coursework. That's not their main focus at that time. And so that's kind of how we utilize the tracking reports for our messaging and to kind of, if you're really looking at the information, you can see what students are in duress and need some assistance, and they're not always going to reach out and ask someone for help. Sometimes that's our job to read between the lines and see how we can help them. Yes, and then depending on the interactions, or if we're not able to get in touch with that student, sometimes if they depending on their class schedule or what program they're in, they have the same faculty for 2 years, so we can kind of have conversations with them to try to piece together what's going on and work from that angle too. Because not every student's going to talk to someone. If they've never met me, they're not going to come and want to explain their life situation, but maybe that faculty member that they've had for 2 or 3 semesters in a row could kind of step in that position if they were willing.
As we heard from Sable, Slate's ability to capture and track data at a granular level to gather insights and to make informed decisions can be invaluable when targeting outreach to students in need. Moving on into the world of advancement, we discussed rethinking the approach to donor engagement with Gina Mandros, the Director of Advancement Operations at Illinois Wesleyan University. Let's hear from Gina.
It's interesting because Wesleyan had a very interesting experience over the last 6 months with COVID, not only with COVID, but with some of the changes that were happening internally in terms of academic affairs, the decisions that our trustees were making about how we would be structured and what our university's priority would be moving forward. And as you can imagine, that was received positively and negatively from our alumni base. And during that time, we were struggling with how to communicate with our alumni base at a time where they didn't want to meet with us in person. We didn't have a chance to meet with them in person. So we really leaned very heavily on our instance so that we could disseminate that information. And what I really liked about that was that we could classify some of those messages so that we could figure out who was receiving them in a positive and negative way by a combination of interactions and posting interactions on people's records based off of the responses of our deliver. We also heavily used forms so that once a gift officer or any representative of the university was reaching out to someone, not just someone in our advancement office, but anyone reaching out to alums based off of what was happening, whether it was COVID related, curriculum related within the university, or even related around some of the social justice issues, they could manually enter in an interaction on the record without having to really have too much interaction within our own system. And then from there, we looked at the positive and negative responses based off of the different categories that we received, and then we started crafting our follow-up messages based off of that. So it was a really good way for us to see, okay, of the people who positively responded to X, Y, or Z topic, they increased their giving over this amount. They started attending our webinars. They started having more than one communication with us. And then the opposite was true as well. How much did we lose in terms of some of the negative correspondences? And it was an opportunity for us to explain to the leadership of the university how the messages that they were putting out there to our alumni and to our alumni base were on the right path. Were they on the right path? Were they giving them the right information, et cetera? In terms of responses for the ways that we adjusted from in-person visits and into calling, emailing, and texting, it seemed to have gone really well. We've had a bigger chance at being able to access and to touch our people in ways that we hadn't before, because honestly, the data is a lot more accessible. So being able to push data out to our gift officers by just sheer Slate functionality, whether it's in a tracking report, in a call center type of a report, or they're just able to run their own queries to find their own constituents that are assigned to them, they've had access to data that they really hadn't before. So that was a really good way for them to be able to, in a more timely manner, reach out to people as soon as they've responded. So when somebody registers for an event, then they're alerted. Or when somebody gives a gift, then they're alerted. Or when one of those negative responses comes and pops up on an interaction or a record, then someone is alerted and they can reach out to them. So it was a really good way for us to keep better track of the responses that our alums and our constituents were receiving at the time.
As Gina pointed out, utilizing Slate to elevate the right data at the right time can maximize and streamline efforts in the modern advancement office. We then followed up with Gina and asked her if she felt these changes were here to stay or if they were temporary. And here's what she had to say.
It will, it's been pretty interesting to see the ways that our engagement teams have reimagined the way that engagement looks. And so I don't know that it'll ever go back to 100% normal, but it will only be better as we move forward. And a great example of that is our Titan Athletics virtual golf outing. So, a golf outing that couldn't previously happen before can now. And whereas before it was an in-person golf outing happening right here in our own town of Bloomington, Illinois, now we're telling them, hey, we've created a portal. You can log in. You can see who's winning, who's not. You have a month to go out, play your foursome wherever you're at in the country. You can still win these prizes. And here's the videos that are embedded that will show our AD, giving shout outs to A, B, or C alum, or giving shout outs to this person who had the worst shot, that type of thing. So that's something that we will now always include as a part of that event moving forward. And the other part of that too is that from the flip side, where we may have had some of those negative responses, whether it was COVID related of, hey, please don't call me, I'm in a really bad spot, etc. We were able to lean very heavily on the way that Slate stores data in terms of some of those entities where we can turn, and rules, and turn people's communication preferences on and off. And so if they're saying, don't call me anymore, then we can say, well, you're only 18. You might want to hear from us in another 4 years. So we'll just do a rule where that is going to end in about 4 years. So from that perspective, I feel like we've been able to give our alums a more customized experience with us that they normally wouldn't have had.
After hearing from Gina, clearly leaning into the virtual environment and taking advantage of rules and automations inside of Slate has plenty of upside and can ultimately lead to an increased level of donor engagement. At this time, I'd like to thank all of our presenters for their valuable insight, feedback, and expertise on the subject. If you'd like more information on how Slate can help you with your entire student lifecycle needs, please visit our virtual booth and request a demo. This ends the presentation, and I'd like to thank you all for attending.